Hey, good afternoon to you. 3:06 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL. Where we're making sense of the news. Coming up today, the great Kash Patel joins us at 3:30. At 4:30, John Lott is here. We talk crime numbers and all of the lies our media tell us. And the FBI, yeah, they've been lying to us too. More updates from John Lott on that, on what's actually happening during the Biden-Harris administration. And then Mary Rook from the Daily Caller joins us to react to President Trump's town hall with women today in Georgia. A great conversation. Mary Rook has got some thoughts on it. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Actually, I'll issue a correction right away. It aired today. It was filmed yesterday. That was the women town hall that President Trump did with Harris Faulkner. Additionally, President Trump also recorded a conversation on Univision today. He did his Univision town hall. It's already concluded. The Trump campaign seems very excited about it. I saw Stephen Chung, one of his top campaign guys, saying that the crowd was really pleased with President Trump and that he stuck around at the end to spend some time with all the people who were there. So you have that to look forward to. I think tonight you'll be able to get a hold of that. Also, Kamala Harris is recording an interview with Bret Baier of the Fox News Channel today. The recording of that interview will take place just an hour before he actually airs it. So it's so funny. People have such distrust in the media now, and for good reason, really good reason. Just in the way that these reporters lie to you about everything. Like, let's just start with the senility of the president of the United States. They just refuse to talk about it. They spend all their time at the White House. They see him up close. They know that he's incapable of stringing sentences together because his brain doesn't work anymore. And then they don't tell you. They chatter, of course, amongst themselves about it, but they don't actually get on any of their networks and report out the biggest story that you could possibly imagine. No, don't want to hurt him. Trump talks about it, so we can't. These stupid impulses they have. Or like all of the lies about the Russia collusion. I could give you a million examples, all of which you'll know, all of which you don't really want to relive, so I'll spare you that. But the people don't trust the media. They have all these suspicions that Kamala's fed all the questions, that she's wearing earrings that are giving her tips as she's doing the debate. Because you are so accustomed to being lied to, your opening assumption is that you're once again being lied to. So a lot of scrutiny on any interviews now that Kamala Harris does and how they'll be constructed, including being directed at Bret Baier. And so Brett's been on X this week answering everybody. To his credit, I think it's a good move. He's been so people will say something like, "Oh, you're going to edit it to make her look good." He's like, "Nope, we're not editing it. We're going to air it as recorded." "Why are you recording it? You should do it live." He's like, "The campaign literally didn't give us an option. They said 5 o'clock. We can't do it at 6, so we're doing it at 5, which means I'll record it and then we'll air it as soon as we can." They only have half an hour with her. That's not a good amount of time. That's a pretty tight time frame. Speaking of somebody who interviews a lot of people, if you're going to have Kamala Harris sit down with you, there is a laundry list of things you'd like to get to. Half an hour is not a lot of time at all. And you need time for follow-ups. You have to be able to drill down as she lies to your face. So we'll see what happens there. I will say that my suspicion, which is almost entirely likely to be true, is that the Kamala team wanted at least an hour of pre-record time so that they could prepare to spin you an hour later. Because if this happened in real time, if it happened live, their ability to try and come up with an answer is you've got to have somebody sharp, nimble on that team. They don't have that, so they'll struggle over the course of the hour to figure out, okay, how do we respond when this thing is shared in public? What do we say? How do we spin this to make ourselves look better? So they're asking for an hour of lead time to do that. That's what's happening. And the crazy thing is, just how different a place like Fox is from, say, CBS or ABC or NBC. CBS is a perfect example. Let's go with them. So CBS sits down with Kamala Harris and does 60 Minutes, right? And then in their teaser for what answers she's going to give during the interview, you hear some gobbledygook coming out of her mouth. And by the time the actual 60 Minutes episode airs, they trim up everything that she said in that answer. And then they give you just like something that sounds semi-coherent, and they act like they never released the teaser audio to begin with, which you already heard, where she gave you the gobbledygook. And even the little tiny answer that they aired finally on their 60-minute special wasn't even from the same answer in the gobbledygook version. So that's the kind of manipulation that's going on by 60 Minutes. They are pre-recording, and then they're editing, and they're trying to rescue Kamala Harris from herself because she's awful at this. Because she's awful at this. And, you know, this just keeps happening. I mean, earlier this week, Corey, was it CBS with Speaker Johnson? It was CBS. Okay, so CBS did the same thing with Speaker Johnson. They capture his audio, but instead of making him look better, they make him look worse. They cut out all of the most relevant stuff that he said in this interview on their Sunday show. And then they air the interview as if this is the way he answered these questions. He didn't. He was talking about talking to voters and what's going on with the hurricane response and how they feel unheard. CBS cut out all of that. They literally just excised it from the interview, didn't share it with the audience, and it was left to Speaker Johnson to record an alibi tape of himself. And by the way, this is highly advisable. If you are a conservative or Republican, if you ever are in the unfortunate position of sitting down and doing a pre-recorded interview with any of these legacy news outlets, record yourself. Record yourself as you do it. As you do it. If you're doing it in person, just turn your phone on, put it in your pocket, capture every single sentence that's uttered between the two of you. Or in this case, Speaker Johnson was sitting in a studio. They just pointed a camera at him in studio, one of his staff members probably, and they captured every word that came out of his mouth. And sure enough, CBS didn't air all of those words. They deceived their audience about the content that was appearing on screen. And thankfully, Speaker Johnson was able to blow past that by sharing it on social media. This also happened with President Trump when he did a 60 Minutes interview. They had all sorts of stuff that didn't make it to air that President Trump was able to share because they recorded the alibi tape. Thank goodness they did that so that he can't be misconstrued. So that leads us to where I started, which is, you know, Fox is going to have this interview with Kamala today. The hilarious thing is that Fox is not going to do that. Bret Baier is not going to do that. He's just going to record the interview, and then they're just going to air it. What a world. What a wild, wacky world where you just share exactly what happened with a person who wants to be the next president of the United States. And I was watching this morning. I always kind of keep a TV hovering, you know, somewhere over my shoulder, kind of usually on mute because I'm doing my work in the morning. I'm reading. I don't like too many things going on because I get distracted. Can't do that. But I did look over my shoulder. There was my television this morning in my office, and I saw Bret was on the Fox News channel for a minute. He was doing some promo work for the interview. And one of the hosts, I think it was Brian Kilmeade, asked Bret, hey, well, if she starts lying, because she's been telling all these hoaxes over and over, the bloodbath hoax, the Charlottesville hoax, the Russia hoax, you take your pick. The dictator hoax, all of these things, the suckers and losers hoax, anything, just any of these stories. If she says that, I think it was Brian asked, are you going to stop her? Are you going to be like, are you going to correct her? And Bret kind of indicated, he's like, yeah, I'm going to have to. If she does that, I'm going to have to. So I think this could be very interesting. Very interesting. I like when people do interviews. I want people to do interviews. I want President Trump out there. I'm glad he's doing this. He's very good at it. Everything from the traditional legacy media all the way down to the podcasts. He just did this podcast last week with a bunch of comedians on Flagrant is the name of the podcast. He did a great job, very casual. He just did another one in the last 24 hours, right, Corey, with some guys, the Bussin' Boys or something. They're like football guys, and they're just talking sports. Trump is making references that Tim Walz wouldn't know in a million years. Tim Walz waves with both hands, by the way. You know about that? When Tim Walz stands on a stage, he waves with both hands. Do you know anybody in your life who waves with two hands? Isn't that weird? I was listening to Corey describe this on Monday when he was filling in on this program, and he said Tim Walz waves with two hands. I couldn't stop thinking about that. I said, that is the perfect way to describe Tim Walz. He waves with two hands. Everybody knows exactly what you mean by that. Yeah. It's crazy. I will say one interview I loved with President Trump was yesterday, him sitting down with the Bloomberg guy, and they brought this crowd out. And isn't it sad? Like, the Bloomberg guy, he thought this whole crowd was on his side. All a bunch of, finance guys, all the guys who are trying to make money on Wall Street, everybody out there. And this guy thinks, oh, they're on my side. I'm the Bloomberg guy. I'm the editor-in-chief at Bloomberg. This audience is with me. And it turns out President Trump was able to win them over pretty dramatically yesterday, to the point that he stole the whole audience from the Bloomberg guy, which was really funny. And they were talking about everything. They were talking about tariffs and how that's going to work and what's going to happen with the economy. It's so funny. Here's John Micklethwaite. That's the guy's name. That's his real name. Asking Trump about tariffs. Tariffs are going to hurt the country.
You're also talking about 20% tariffs on the rest of the world. That is going to have a serious effect on the overall economy. And yes, you're going to find some people who will gain from individual tariffs. The overall effect could be massive in terms of the economy.
I agree it's going to have a massive effect, positive effect. It's going to be a positive, not a negative.
Well,
let me just tell you. I know how committed you are to this, and it must be hard for you to, spend 25 years talking about tariffs as being negative, and then have somebody explain to you that you're totally wrong. It'll have a negative. It will have. I'll go a step further.
40 million, 40 million jobs is a lot of jobs to rely on.
They're all coming back.
Those are 40 million jobs. Those are 40 million jobs in America that rely on trade.
Are you ready? John Deere, great company. They announced about a year ago they're going to build big plants outside of the United States, right? They're going to build them in Mexico.
And you threatened them with tariffs and they stopped.
That's right. I said, if John Deere builds those plants, they're not selling anything into the United States. They just announced yesterday they're probably not going to build the plants, okay? I kept the jobs here.
And the crowd, it was so interesting to watch. Really went wild for President Trump yesterday in that conversation. Really funny. As he just keeps dressing this guy's down. He's like, you've been saying for 25 years tariffs are awful, and it must be so shocking for you to find out you've been wrong for all this time. Funny. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris was just trying to keep her head above water with Charlemagne Tha God. His real name is Leonard, and the two of them were having something of a town hall yesterday. I will say most of it, as I understand it, was disgusting. It was like Charlemagne was sucking up to her the whole time, and it wasn't, by and large, the kind of interview that would normally produce interesting moments. But there were a couple of things where Charlemagne phrased the question in such a way that it was like, well, hey, other people say things like the economy is better under Republicans. Why do people believe that? Here's how Kamala fielded that.
For some reason, the narrative is that the economy does better under Republicans. Why do people believe that, and why don't Democrats push back on that narrative?
Why do people believe that? Well, the data bear that out.
Well, I think that part of the issue is that Democrats probably talk about it more in terms of what we are doing for people rather than the economy, when in fact, when you do for people, the economy grows.
Mm-hmm. It's just a problem with our spin. That's the typical answer we've heard out of the White House. Whenever there's an issue, it's like, hey, what's going on with the border? We're just doing a poor job of really explaining that actually everything is totally fine. It's like us Democrats, we get caught up in these silly little details. We should pat people on the head more and tell them everything's fine. Stop asking questions. Charlemagne also asked, hey, what's the deal with Obama? Charlemagne almost sounded angry about this part. What's the deal with Obama scolding black men? When are you going to start scolding other races?
But I do want to say, President Obama was out there last week waving his finger at black men. When are Liz Cheney and Hillary Clinton going to wave their finger at white women? When are Bill Clinton?
Liz Cheney and Hillary Clinton, as the representative of all white women, when are they going to start scolding white women?
And Joe Biden going to wave their finger at white men? Because 52% of white women voted for Trump in 2016. 55% voted for Trump in 2020. They all voted against their own interests. When the finger waving,
they voted against their own interests. Voting for Trump is a vote against your own interest, he says. Remember when the country was nice and safe? Remember that? Remember when the borders were much more intact? Remember when the economy didn't suck? Those women. Well, I can't believe they would vote for a thriving American economy.
But at them.
Well, thank you for highlighting that. I do have the support of over 200 Republicans who worked for various administrations, including everyone going back to Ronald Reagan to the Bushes to.
So the answer to his question, remember, the beginning of it was, hey, what's the deal with Obama scolding black men? When are you going to have other races get scolded? She answers, thank you for highlighting that Dick Cheney endorsed me. That's her response. It's crazy.
Now, one thing they've been saying, a lot of your press hits get criticized. Folks say you come off as very scripted. They say you like to stick to your talking points. And some media says you have...
That would be called discipline.
Oh, okay. Speak to that.
But go on.
No, I was going to say some people say you have an inability to fearlessly say who you are and what you believe. I know that's not true. But what do you say to that criticism? And is it fair for SNL to make fun of it?
Hasn't Maya Rudolph been wonderful?
Yes.
I think I have nothing but admiration for the comedy, and I think it's important to be able to laugh at yourself and each other.
But what do you say to people
in the spirit of obviously comedy and
yes.
not belittling people as my opponent would do.
But what do you say to people who say you stay on the talking points?
I would say you're welcome.
I would say you're welcome, she says. Now, what a bizarre answer. You know what that means, right? If we were to take her at face value. And who knows what she actually believes about anything. That's part of the problem. But when she says that's called discipline, and what do you say to people who say you stick to the talking points too much? I would say you're welcome is her response. What that means is you're lucky you don't know Kamala Harris's real views. You are lucky that she stays on script. You are lucky that she stays, in her words, disciplined. Because you don't want to see an undisciplined, off-script Kamala Harris. If you see that, you will be horrified. So you are welcome, says Kamala Harris. You're welcome that I'm sticking to the script they're giving me. That's the answer she gave Charlemagne. And I love his framing. Some people are saying, I'm not saying this. I think you're great. I know you're just the best. But some people are saying that you are shallow and you have no real views and you're just reading talking points. Some people say that. She said, well, I would say you're welcome. She's even bad at that. She's bad at delivering the talking points. Hey, coming up, Kash Patel joins us, former deputy assistant to President Trump. We've got to break down Liz Cheney's role. You know, Liz Cheney, the woman who endorsed Kamala, in that January 6th show trial that they did in Congress, and what hand she played in manipulating the witnesses. That's ahead. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 3:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up next hour, John Lott will join us from the Crime Prevention Research Center, and we talk to him about some very important crime data, what's actually happening in the United States, despite the lies that our FBI and media tell. And Mary Rook will be with us from the Daily Caller at 5 o'clock. We talked to her about President Trump's town hall today with women in Georgia and what the president can do to win so many more women over to him for this election. You can join us 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. My next guest is a former deputy assistant to President Trump, former chief of staff at the Department of Defense, and he's the author of Government Gangsters. Kash Patel is back with us. Hello, Kash.
Hey, it's great to be with you from the Team Trump Trail here in North Carolina.
You're in North Carolina. You're on the campaign trail. What are you seeing in North Carolina? This is a very close state.
Oh, absolutely. It's like any other close state, any other swing state. We're on the Team Trump bus tour. We've been in Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia. Now we're up in North Carolina. And what we're seeing is at every one of these stops, we meet and hear from Americans that tell me they've never participated in the electoral process. This is their first time. How do I get involved? How do I do more than vote? And they're all saying it's for the same reason, because I asked them, and they're like, we want Donald Trump to fix America. We don't want Kamala Harris back in. So I'm energized by that swath of new folks coming out. And if we can combine that number with all of our folks at home to show up in election season, not election day, early voting begins here tomorrow in North Carolina, get it going, then I think and I believe Donald Trump will be victorious.
What do you make of the early voting numbers coming out of Georgia, Kash? Yesterday was a record for early voting in a single day. Lots of people showing up. I see some lefties thinking that means something good for them. Meanwhile, Republicans are definitely as energized as I've ever seen them. What do you make of it?
Well, look, we've had a tectonic shift in how we view the election cycle. We used to go and say we have to do it on Election Day, and there's nothing wrong with saying and believing in that. But we've seen what happens when we wait till the end, and we can't do that anymore. And the effective message on the campaign trail has been, especially with President Trump's brilliance, is being go vote early and help everybody else vote during the election season in and up to Election Day. And Georgia was no different. We were campaigning there with 4 or 5 days on the bus, and we said the same message in every county GOP office we stopped in every Trump 47 office we stopped in every community we stopped in. So I believe these early voting numbers are reflective of President Trump's mission to turn out our support, his base, and new voters, and not just what the Democrats are believing.
You know, yesterday, President Trump did that interview with the Bloomberg editor-in-chief. Today, we got to see the women town hall that he did in Georgia. And I have to say, he looks about as relaxed as I've ever seen him on the campaign trail. He doesn't actually – he doesn't look frantic or anything. Yeah. He doesn't look like in any way desperate. Meanwhile, all of the signals coming from the Kamala campaign is that she's changing her strategy every 24 hours right now in the hopes that something sticks. What are you making of all of that, and what do you think is happening in terms of the internal polling in these campaigns?
Well, the shotgun blast approach against the wall and hope something sticks is not how you win to become the next commander-in-chief. America sees right through that because she has no policy and no operational skill to set this country on the right track, versus President Trump, who hasn't changed his policy since the first administration. He just has to tweak it a little to remake America after these last 4 disastrous years. And I was with President in Coachella. I was with him in Arizona. I spoke at both venues, total of over 125,000 people. And you're right, the president is relaxed. He is in a good mood because his message that he's been delivering is one he believes in, whether it's the border or ending the forever wars or safeguarding our military or taking care of our vets and law enforcement and teachers and first responders. Kamala Harris has no message she believes in, save elect me for president and I'll do better next time. And that's just not going to work this go around.
Do you think it's a good idea that she's doing this Bret Baier interview today?
You asked me in a couple hours. I just hope Bret Baier asks some tough follow-up questions. She's going to have a 25-minute interview that they're airing unedited, which I love. And, every interview Kamala Harris does, the first question is a softie, and then there's no follow-up when she deflects on answering basic questions like, how are you going to end the forever wars? How are you going to stop the drug traffickers? How are you going to seal the border? Should illegal immigrants be granted the right to vote, given millions of dollars of money instead of everyday Americans? I mean, these are tough questions that she's allowed to sidestep because she's doing podcasts about sex and going on programs that are literally irrelevant to the presidency of the United States, whereas Donald Trump, he's front and center on every TV program, radio show, podcast you can imagine, and taking the tough questions every single day.
You think President Trump will be on Joe Rogan before this election is out? I saw Kamala's campaign is leaking that they're trying to arrange for that to happen. I think that will be a disaster for her, so I do hope she does it. What do you make of that?
Yeah, look, my gut tells me, I don't have any inside track, wink, wink. My gut tells me that you'll see President Trump on there. And I would hope to see both on there. That's what we want when you have such a big audience and such a big show like Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
You should be interviewing both equally and objectively. And I don't think President Trump would ever shy away from an interview for Joe Rogan. And it sounds like between him and Elon Musk, they might have something going there. And yeah, Kamala, if you've got the gumption, get on the program, one of the largest shows in the world, and see if you could sit down toe-to-toe with Joe.
Yeah, and as you pointed out, follow-ups, those are going to be her Achilles heel. And Joe Rogan does ask follow-ups. He'll ask, wait, can you explain that? He'll say something like that. Literally, that'll be the follow-up. Can you explain that? And that's when she self-immolates. It'll be great. Hey, but when you say, Kash Patel, when you say, I don't have an inside track, wink, wink, how many winks does it take for me to believe you do have an inside track?
Well, it's a good thing you can't see me because I'm winking incessantly over here.
All right, I guess we'll wait to see what that means. So we'll know more about Kash Patel after Trump does the Joe Rogan podcast. Hey, tell me your thoughts on some of this emerging information about that crazy January 6th committee that Nancy Pelosi put together, all designed to try and savage Trump and muddy him up heading into this election. We're starting to see some text messages coming out that. One of the hosts of The View, called Alyssa Farah, was serving as a middlewoman between Cassidy Hutchinson, that's the former Trump staffer who claimed that Trump lunged for the steering wheel on January 6th and tried to drive the president.
Bulletproof windows.
Yes, and she was the middlewoman between Cassidy Hutchinson and Liz Cheney, who then I guess subsequently had an actual conversation with Cassidy Hutchinson. You've been involved in congressional investigations here. What kind of problems have you identified with this?
Massive. I ran the Russiagate investigation, and we ran it the way America is supposed to run congressional oversight and gave the people the facts as we found them, not as we wanted to twist them. Here, I was the first guy subpoenaed by the January 6th Unselect Committee, cost me untold amounts of money. I told them the truth, but just like they did with every other truthful interview, they buried my transcript. They buried Nancy Pelosi's video where she admitted she was responsible for the failure of the security on January 6th. She recorded that video on January 6th while making a movie. And so now it's no surprise. This is just like the lovebird text messages all over again. The FBI hid those. This is what corrupt bureaucrats and officials do when they want to put out a false narrative, a disinformation campaign. And Liz Cheney architected it along with former Trump staffers there who have a personal vendetta against the president. And they knew the mainstream media would just lap it up and cover it up. I want all these messages out. That's why we got to win the Congress, the Senate, the House, and everything so we can get everything out there and America can finally read how corrupt Liz Cheney and that entire committee and how much at fault Nancy Pelosi is. And President Trump was right to authorize the National Guard days in advance, and they rejected it.
But this seems like a trend among anti-Trump forces because that basically you'll get these Democrats or people like Liz Cheney will coordinate in advance with witnesses up to and including the point picking their legal counsel for them, and then
paying for them.
And then paying for them. Yeah, what is that?
Yeah, look, this is what Washington, D.C. does. They go out there and say, oh, you have a personal vendetta against Trump. You are an actual Republican who believes in his policies, but you'll shed those because you're such a hypocrite that you will allow your personal beliefs to interfere with what you think is right for this country, and you'll literally lie for it and get in bed with corrupt politicians and folks like Adam Schiff and Adam Goldman and Kinzinger and Cheney, and the list goes on. All of those folks served in Congress or still do and were sworn to uphold the Constitution, and they perpetrated the biggest lie a congressional inquiry has ever had on the American people about January 6th. There was no insurrection. They knew it from jump, and they hid the truth. It's like hiding evidence of innocence from a jury or a judge. That's how bad it is.
Cash, I'm sure you've thought about this, and I know you're out there on the campaign trail for Trump, but I just want to ask you some hypotheticals about what happens depending on who wins this election with all of this, because I am concerned about how Democrats will wield their power should Kamala Harris win. Given what we've already seen, what do you expect out of a Harris presidency should that occur?
I don't expect it at all. I expect they're going to complain incessantly because we are outworking them with our great leader, President Trump. We're going to end the two-tier system of weaponized justice that is raiding our houses of worship and where our children go to school and prosecuting and investigating folks who believe in the America First movement, especially in Donald J. Trump. We've seen the unconstitutional prosecutions there. America's tired of having the government come into their homes unlawfully just to illegally surveil them so they can have political capital in Washington, D.C. And so I think people are tired of that tyranny. And so we're going to go out and work it till the day of November 5th, and I think everybody else should.
Okay, let me flip it around then. What is the left going to do if President Trump wins in this race, as you say he will? Because here's why I ask. There's some big picture questions involved here. One of them is that the Democrats have brought in Mark Elias, one of the top Democrat election lawyers in the country, and the goal will be to challenge the results of the election if Trump prevails in November. Mark Elias is a guy who previously claimed that voting machines were meddled with in a New York congressional district when a Republican won there rather than a Democrat. He doesn't really know any limits in terms of the claims he might make. And Jamie Raskin has said that on January 6th, he intends to block Trump from becoming president of the United States during the counting of the Electoral College votes. What do you expect to happen, Cash?
Look, Mark Elias is the one who illegally funded campaign finance dollars to start Russiagate on behalf of the Hillary Clinton campaign.
Yep.
That's the Mark Elias who came into Congress when we questioned him and gave us the half-truths about his involvement in that. And so it's no surprise they've gone back to the contortion artists to go in and give them their old playbook. But we'll love to see. Look, we're going to fight it out till the end, till November 5th. Winning is the only thing that matters right now. And I would love to see the day when these hypocrites come full circle and say they're going to have their own January 6th, and they're going to go out into court and challenge this election because Donald Trump won it rightfully and lawfully. I can't wait to put these constitutional terrorists in their place and put law and order back in the White House.
All right. Kash Patel out on the campaign trail in North Carolina right now and on our air. We really appreciate that, Kash. Good to talk to you today.
Thanks, and hope your audience watches the movie Government Gangsters. It's a blockbuster. Check it out at warroom.film.
Government Gangsters, warroom.film. Thank you, Kash. All right, there's Kash Patel out on the campaign trail. There are some good numbers coming out for President Trump. The betting markets are going wildly in President Trump's direction right now. If you're just doing a vibe check on the campaigns, it's based on what I was talking about a moment ago. It's obvious what campaign feels like they've got swagger, which campaign feels like they need to sweat. It's abundantly clear right now. Does that mean that the outcome is definitely going to be that Trump wins this election? No, you can't. You can't for a moment pause and think about it that way. But clearly something very fascinating is happening. And so Kamala is going to sit down with Fox today. We'll have that interview coming up. We'll be able to share that audio. I'll be able to go through it with you tomorrow. And President Trump's big Univision town hall is set to air tonight. We'll be able to go through that as well. A lot to look forward to in this wild race as the left gets more and more desperate. And to the point that I mentioned The View earlier, Alyssa Farah, one of the co-hosts there, to the point that they're now saying the most lunatic, they're always saying lunatic things, but they're trying to bring it to the most hyperbolic level you can even imagine. As the women of The View today began claiming that Trump is going to have the Air Force bomb their studio if he wins. The hilarious audio is ahead. I'm already voting for Trump. They don't need to convince me. Joy Behar thinks that there are multiple Air Forces in the United States who will soon be setting their sights on wherever they film The View.
Let me tell you something. I was watching interviews with MAGA supporters. They do not believe that he will do what he says he's going to do. That is what we're up against. So if you say he's going to be
it's literally the opposite. People who support Trump believe he will do what he says he's going to do.
Dictator on day one. He wants to punish with the Air Forces, whatever we have, the armed forces. He wants to punish people who disagree with him, like people like us. Okay? And they say, oh, he's not going to do that. He's going to take us out of NATO. No, he's not going to.
He's going to bomb The View? Is that?
Do that. So it's very hard for us to talk to these people because they.
By the way, the reason you don't bomb The View, it's a huge waste of taxpayer money. Just don't do that.
Refuse to believe, and I guess they're hearing it on Fox or elsewhere. All right, let's talk about fascism for a second.
Okay.
Because that came up also. I think that you covered this other part. This is the definition. It's defined as a political movement that embraces the far-right nationalism and the forceful suppression of any opposition, all overseen by an authoritarian government. That definition has Trump's picture next to it in the dictionary.
Right.
I mean, he wants to send the military
this
to
is the
attack
party.
liberals.
This, of course, is the party that imprisons their political opponents by the thousands. You pray outside of an abortion clinic, there's a jail cell for you.
He gets in. That is basically... And
it's the, the Mussolini definition of fascism is, of course, the merger of state and corporate power, which The View is very much a part of.
The king of fascism is Mussolini, who spoke better English than he does, by the way. And so I think that to say that he's a fascist is completely accurate.
Which means it's completely inaccurate, obviously.
I mean, it does fit the definition. He wants to send the military in to attack his opponents. I mean, what more do you really need to hear? I'm starting...
She's literally making this up. There's not even the tiniest little ice cube she can stand on to float on, to form the core of this argument.
To worry about the polls because I see a lot of the media saying that he's leading and everybody's getting nervous and all that.
That's why they're saying it.
But they're doing that on purpose.
The polls are rigged to help Trump. That makes perfect sense.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Basically, it's so disheartening for Democrats and people who are leaning towards Kamala to say, well, what's the point? Don't buy into that.
No.
Oh. How does ABC get away with this? Like, you just get a bunch of mentally ill people and you put them on television and you exploit them for money? That's what they do? Trump's going to waste taxpayer dollars on bombing The View? Isn't Trump friends with Elon Musk now? Can't we send them to space? That would be far more interesting. Send Whoopi and Joy up to the space station, see how they handle it. We'll send them. They can colonize Mars. Stay with us. John Lott's going to talk to us about the truth, about the crime data. The View lies about it. John Lott tells the truth. That's ahead.